Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, Jazz Guitar Lessons. In this episode, it's going to be pretty off the cuff, just, me talking to you, a bit of tough love around the edges about a topic that's really dear to my heart, that when I speak about, I have a lot of energy for, and I would frankly say sometimes I'm pissed at it, and it's not clickbait, it's something I want to discuss, that I have discussed again, that's probably the crux, like something so primordial with learning anything, but specifically here learning jazz and guitar, that it's hidden in plain sight. So we'll talk about this today. I'll give you specific steps, 3 main things that I think you should be able to do by the end of this video, no kidding, that can have a drastic impact. And I'll show you also how I do it with my students in the coaching program. So let's get going. Alright, the big reveal, the topic of this video, super simple, getting feedback, or at least listening to yourself on a recording. I don't mean like playing and, oh yeah, I'm listening to myself. I mean recording oneself and getting either valuable feedback from experts or peers or mentors, and or listening to yourself critically. That's the topic of this episode. Pretty simple, right? Often I will tell you guys, a lot of you will waste your time with one-on-one lessons. Yeah, and I've done it myself, and I see a lot of people saying, here's a master, I'm going to go and take private lessons with this guy, he charges $60 per session, and then I get a session, it's like drinking from the fire hose directly, and then we do 2 sessions, and I have enough stuff to work for 6 months, and I go, why am I going facepalm? Number 1, information does not change behavior. Everyone together, information does not change behavior. I think I'm going to write a symphony. Information does not change behavior. Or else, my body, my Greek god body, all these books I have on my bookshelf I'm looking at about health and nutrition, maybe how about the stock markets and whatever, I would already be rich and super fit, and I'm neither of these things. So that, right? So the amount of information we believe was the missing link, and since we have the internet and all the information at our disposal, we go, oh, that's not the thing that's moving the needle on my goal. If I want to improvise on jazz standards, the next 15 or 20 books I get, or the next 15 or 20 courses I get, or the next 15 or 20 private lessons I get are not going to change that if it's based on just gathering more information. You dig me? Okay, cool. So this is something that, you see, I'm a bit frustrated in ways. It's something that's hard to come across. It's something that's hard to sell, because of course I'm a coach and I have guitar lessons and I want to help people make the most progress. And the people that do make the most progress are the ones that are courageous enough to submit their videos to get a critique. So I think I went on a tangent here. So we were talking about this guy taking 2 private lessons with a master, drinking for the fire hose and going, I have enough for 6 months. That's good. Here's the thing. The big facepalm of one-on-one lessons to me is not having the master be able to listen critically, because a lot of private instructors will just play and talk through the entire thing to go, I'm going to give you your money's worth. I'm going to give you what you came here for, right? And I'll tell you, quite frankly, I've been battling this online for the past while. It's quite the opposite. A student really needs to be heard at the level at which he or she is. Like, oh, this is how you're fingering the shapes. This is your sound. This is your technique. So this needs to be addressed. This needs to be assessed. So the most benefit you can get is if an expert is able to hear you. And I'm not just saying that. That's fact. All right. And that's the drawback of having an expert that's going to blabber and not necessarily be aware of the needs that you have, not necessarily be aware of where you are in your journey, that will just throw stuff at you. And then while you have all this stuff to work on, you don't even know if you're doing it correctly. It may be a slight shift in your position. It may be a fingering issue. It may be a timing thing. Maybe that you don't even hear the rhythm. And people say, well, that's the only way to do it. Look at all these orchestra players. They've all done it with one-on-one lessons with masters. But if you guys are scientists a bit like me, it's like there's survivor bias involved here. Like, yes, this happened. It's like if I put all lottery winners and go, look, all these guys, they've all bought lottery tickets. But we just don't include the people that did buy the lottery tickets that never won. So I think there's a lot of wastage. There's a lot of things that it could be made better. Okay, that's my sort of pseudo frustration. Now let me give you the solutions on how to move forward with this. 3 main steps. I'll give them here, and I will go in detail, in depth with each and with demo, and I've got some stuff around here you'll see. Number 1 is having the feedback, or at least a self-critique. Number 2 is not mixing the self-awareness and the doing it. So don't mix is the advice. The don't mix means you should definitely play, and then there's a time to reflect and to critique it. All right. And number 3 is, what's the holy grail you're looking for in terms of playing and getting the feedback? And I have attained that holy grail, and I explain exactly what it is. If you're striving for that, it doesn't mean that you'll be a legendary player, but at least you'll have what it needs to keep making progress for a lifetime. So let's get going with number 1. All right, number 1, demo. I have a suitcase. I haven't found that. It was somewhere in a drawer. All right, look at this. So this was my old... Don't even know. Jam session, April 4, 2008. Cool. Awesome. I got this demo. Look, it's written by hand on top, and this is where I would go to coffee shop and go. I played Summertime and Solar. Nardis, I played solo in a guitar festival. Ornithology, Days of Wonder Rose. Look, it's written by hand. I went to a coffee shop here, locally, 2006. And I was like, can we get a gig? Cool. That was recorded at guy, bass player, his name is Jake. Bonne fête. This is happy birthday to my dad. I think he gave it back to me. So it was classical guitar pieces for about 10 years, even though he told me I sounded bad. So that's a story for another time. How about this one? Another Jake recording. That was my demo. There's a picture. Look at that. Us 3 guys. What did we play? That's printed like at home. Right. Saga, the Harrison Crab Feathers. Craziology, Nardis, Simple Matter of Conviction. Stellar. Stellar is our version of Solar and Stella. Yeah. So what else? Jam, University of Montreal, 2009. Baby Steps, Bemsha Swing, Be Beyond, Bemsha Swing, Take the Coltrane. So that was just a jam. So you see, for me, so that's just like bootleg stuff. So jams with friends, practice sessions. I did record an EP in 2011. You can see my artist website. It's called The Time It Took. There's 5 songs. Guys that played on this are amazing. Alan and Marcin. Thanks, guys. So there's that, and also I have a full-length record that I did in 2018. So all that to tell you, as a teenager, I would literally take that tape deck. You know, the one with 2 tapes? I was 14, and I just press record, and I would play Sweet Dreams or Led Zeppelin songs, or I learned some AC/DC riffs, and I would play it back. I was a fan of, what's her name? Pat Benatar, right? So I would just like learn these things and then listen and go, interesting. I didn't even know, but I was doing this not very consciously, but I knew it was important to play and then assess myself. So I've always done this. So number 1, that's my history of self-critique and listening to myself. This beats by 1,000 miles just playing and not having any external idea how I sound, okay? Number 2, I've already told you in my frustrated introduction, this is a really hard to sell concept, especially when I tell guys on my coaching calls, guys, you gotta submit videos of your playing. And they go like, why? It's embarrassing, I'm ashamed, I don't think I sound good enough. Exactly, that's why you need to send that in, because you'll never be able to make progress if you're not aware of the thing that you need to improve, right? So it's like a soccer game or hockey game or football game. You need the tape. You need to watch the game to see how things worked out. Say it's a football game. There's a perspective from the top, from the audience, that you're never going to get if you're a player on the field. You'll never be able to see all that. So that's one of the reasons we do it. And just some screenshots here on the screen. For a while, one of my mentors has been compiling the data on how many video submissions we have each month. So some are very short, like an etude, like 45 seconds. Some are full recitals. But you can see on the screen that we are tackling that data because it matters. And I haven't completed that yet, because it's not going to be very scientific, but I would bet that there's a really high correlation with the degree of improvement one feels in their ability and the number of videos they submit for feedback, especially if the player, the student, is able to implement the feedback somewhat, or go, I see, I recorded myself, I sent it to you. There's an expert or experts or mentors or peers that watched it and went like, oh, you need to pay attention to this, and go, oh, I'm the student. I never noticed I was doing that. Let me change it somewhat. So that's intelligence. It's not just information. It's implementing the information for better change. All right. So in a nutshell, that's step number 1. Do it. You can use your phone. On iPhone, there's an audio recording app. You put your phone right there. You play for a minute. Just see what are you able to achieve. This thing never lies. You'll play it back and go, oh, I'm not in time. Oh, there's a string ringing out. I never knew my first finger was in the way. Oh, I never noticed my amp was so loud. I never noticed I cut the end of chords short. I don't know. You're going to find out things that are the things you should be working on. Because while, say, I'm busy playing, I'm not necessarily aware because my focus is somewhere else. And I think I would go as far as saying, us humans, we have a feature. It's not a bug. It's a feature. We can only point our attention on one place. Right? So if I tell you, hey, big toe, your left big toe, you're there now? Yeah. But it's really hard to count the changes to giant steps while you're doing that. Like your attention is going to be in one place. So that's why we work on stuff to put them in an automated or semi-automated role so we can execute on it, so we can start to focus on different things. So jazzers do a lot of techniques and chords and harmonies so they can now focus on expressing themselves with ideas that are fun. I think while most of us get stuck in the learning of the vocabulary, we're like, well, I need more syntax to say the stuff I say. While I'm like, no, let's just try to express ourselves and come back to the drawing board if you're missing vocabulary. My 2 cents. So, number 1 on my little notes, feedback and self-critique is what you should be doing. Feedback is ideally when someone else listens to your recording and you trust that their advice is going to be good. And the self-critique is just listening intently with a calm mind. If you're doing a jam, whatever, don't listen to it the same day. Wait a few days, listen to it, and then be as distant as if it weren't you that's playing. That's the advice. So number 1, feedback and self-critique. Listen to yourself. The more, the better. You're not going to believe the results. All right, number 2, as promised, don't mix it up. And here's what I mean by mixing it up. The problem will be that I will say because we all do it. I'll use I statements. I will play and be very aware that I'm recording myself. If you put on a video on your phone and you try to record, you'll see the camera goes on and suddenly you can't play. Yeah, me too. So while I play, I'm not trying to be the self-critique aware feedback person. I'm just playing. I'm trying to get lost in the moment of doing the thing I'm trying to do, which is playing the tune or the changes or whatever. Okay? And I'm doing that. And I'm giving this as far as advice because the opposite is hell, which means I'm trying to do the thing, but at the same time, that darn voice in my head, I'm going to listen to it. It's like, oh, it's not swinging. You should have done this on the change. Why are you playing so high? No. Why are you playing so low? You shouldn't play that many low notes. Why is that? Didn't you see that the altered scale was better for the flat 9? Why did you... Like that voice, it's going to kill you, right? And we all have it. Stephen Pressfield, a great new... I discovered this author recently. He calls it resistance. And there's also a name for that in the Kabbalistic literature. It's a very spiritual thing. It's like it's the shadow for a certain part of the world. It's the Carl Jung shadow, that concept. That thing is always there. So here's my second advice, is not to mix trying to be self-aware while I do the thing. While I'm playing a football game, I'm the player on the field, I'm focusing on my role of what my purpose is and execute that to the best of my ability. And in football, they say throw a Hail Mary. That's what I'm doing all the time, right? Or I'm expecting of myself to do that. And that's where I'll recommend another video that's about a minute long. It's called Finished, Not Perfect. It's from a cartoonist or someone that does visual arts, right? And it's such a deep, profound lesson. Finish the thing. It's not going to be perfect, but put it down once it's done. So do a take and just make sure that you don't try to be as self-aware. You're not attempting to implement anything. Just let yourself go. Let yourself be carried in the moment. That's the lesson. One thing of note before we go to the third tip, so it's okay to jot down how you felt. Like Wes Montgomery in the studio would say, oh, well, I felt like my solo wasn't as good. Could we do a second take? It's okay to jot that down, but then don't let that be a direct reflection of the self-critique. It should be put on hold. So at least try again to put that voice on hold and just to execute what you're about to execute. Now let's move on to the third tip. So the third tip is what I call the Holy Grail, which is your standard or what you're striving to do for the perception. And again, just to recap quickly, feedback and self-critique. By the way, we are revamping the way I'm going to do the coaching on the website and blog. See the link in the description below. There's currently a wait list, so that's going to be early September of 2024. jazzguitarlessons.net/waitlist, one word, no hyphen. And that's going to be to uncover new course offers and also ways of having a hybrid feedbacking program along with a very bare bone, simple, easy, song-centric process, which avoids people doing years and years of scales and arpeggios and theory and not winding up being able to play a tune. Yeah, you know that one too, which is like, hey, play me a song. You've been taking jazz lessons 5 years. Yeah, play me a tune. Can't? Yeah. So my program, my new stuff remedies that, but right now I'm just building a list and I'm building the products so you guys can get a bit of coaching, a bit of my advice or the other peers' advice at the same time as a very focused accountability class. So this is all in the works. Join the waitlist below. Thank you. And so back to the Holy Grail. So here's a standard. You get feedback and you get used to listening to yourself, which can be horrible at first, as I've done with my tape deck as a kid, where, you know, you could record on top of another tape or you could record the FM radio playing. Yeah, I've done plenty of that. And then don't try to be the self-aware person. Don't mix the self-aware. Just play, and then listen to yourself. And number 3, what you're striving to do with the Holy Grail is to completely match what it sounded like while you were playing with what it actually sounds like when you're watching the recording, or listening to yourself. When those two things merge, which they've done for me, it's fantastic. And when I'm saying this, it's not like boasting or not like bragging. It doesn't mean that you're at the end of the road musically or that you can't get any better. But for me, when I play and I record myself, and I record it, watch it later, I remember, I'm like, oh yeah, that was the second course of Girlfriend Ipanema. I've done this with the scale and this with the arpeggio, whatever. There's no surprise. So it means that my awareness of the during and my awareness of the recording is the same. Well, what you'll notice over time is you'll record yourself, and that's one end of the spectrum. You may not be far off the end of the spectrum, but you're here, and you listen to yourself, and most of it you're like, oh yeah, that's how I played, and then, surprise, I didn't know I played that chord this loud. I didn't know, right? So the recording uncovers these areas. So the great thing about being less and less caught up with the technique and less caught up with that darn voice in my head and less caught up with whatever other musicians or if the bartender is cute or whatever, the more aware I am during the playing becomes almost like a meditation, so that when I listen back, there's no surprises. For me right now, I have it, there's no surprises. I did 4 or 5 gigs in the past, say 7 or 8 weeks, and all the recordings, I'm like, yeah, that's... I knew how good or how bad it sounded. I just knew because I was there while doing it and I wasn't preoccupied with other things. It will not be your case as first, because the recording will uncover all these beautiful things that you were not aware of, and guess what you're going to work on in your playing to become a better player. Yeah, 20 minutes to tell you guys that. Exactly. The stuff that comes up is your syllabus now. And your syllabus is going to be different than my syllabus and everyone else. Although we play the same tunes, we know the same vocabulary, we know the same arpeggios and songs, the stuff we love is all there. Okay, so just one tiny experience I have to share with you. There's an event in my last gig, actually, where I listened to the recording and my awareness during is slightly different from the recorded awareness. And I'm not making up excuses or BS, but I'll tell you what happened. I'm playing a blues, and it's just a bass player and another guitarist accompanying me. And clearly, the guitarist and I were not in the same place. So I'm improvising. I'm taking a solo, but he probably fudged a beat or 2 beats. Like, he's a bit behind. So I purposely blocked him off from my hearing, and I just followed the bass player because I know me and the bass, we are in the same place in the form, and it's just a blues in B flat, and I know the other guitar guy is going to catch up eventually. He's going to go, got lost. So at that time, when I listened to the recording, I'm like, it's interesting to hear me and bass totally go for it, and then this guy being sort of in a limbo. And the mix is pretty interesting because it's like you didn't expect these hits or these chords to be in these places, but it's like pretty cool. So I'm like, I could not have been aware of that because I was so intently focused on the bass player. But that's again the feature of the human consciousness. Like, I could only focus on my things. I was focused on myself and listening to the bass player. And I'll leave you with wise words again. If you're interested in more coaching, I do these videos for of course, promotional stuff, marketing stuff. It's very difficult to teach these kinds of concepts. This has been the bane of my existence since 2009. But it is a fascinating world. Just learning how to learn is sort of my jam. And if you're interested in finding out more, just join the waitlist before we release our new materials in later this year, probably late September, October, November, depending on when I finish. That said, the last anecdote is, I believe it's either Pat Metheny or Herbie Hancock that said, there's a point where you can have different perspectives on hearing yourself. And I'm going to miss that quote, but it's probably something along the lines of, I hear myself as myself, then I hear myself sound from within the band. So I hear guitar, say, from the perspective of how the other guys in the band hear me, and then I can go even further back in my awareness and be aware of how I sound from the standpoint of the audience listening to me playing in a band. And then you can play with that. It's just a thought experiment, or it's a figure of speech, but there's value in hearing these different layers. It sounds the same. The mix is the same. The song is the same. The scales are the same. Like, everything is the same thing. The nuance, everything's the same, but where the attention is put, it feels a slightly bit different. So the best players in the world, the Herbies and the Pat Methenys, of course, they sound awesome regardless of where you listen to them from. So it's a great little paradox, because you may play with a group, and if we isolate your part like this, perfect, you're doing a great job, you're in time, you're playing all the chords, whatever. And if you zoom out, like, yes, but your part in this, maybe your comping was too heavy for the sax solo. Or maybe you don't feel it when just listening to yourself, but when we scroll back, you're like, oh, you're just a bit behind. You dropped a beat or something. You added a beat to the bar, you dropped a beat. You're behind, or you're rushing. Or you're way more busy than what the singer needs. Or the drummer's way too loud for you. Right? Or, all these things you can only be aware of when you sort of take a step back, but an auditory step back and not like a physical step back, although both would work. On that note, that's it. I'm Mark from Jazz Guitar Lessons. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this content. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'll see you in the next episode. Take care. Bye.